Bonjour. Ça va depuis hier?
This is very impressive. Your Majesty, Monsieur le Président, nous sommes tous très honorés de vous accueillir ici aujourd'hui. Je tiens tout d'abord à remercier mes collègues britanniques et français, chère Claire Coutinho, ainsi que Christophe Béchu, Sylvie Retailleau, Lord Bennion et Sarah El Haïry, qui ont chacun présidé une table ronde aujourd'hui, de même que l'ensemble des chefs d'entreprise et des scientifiques qui nous ont rejoints. Nous avons réuni aujourd'hui 40 participants représentant des entreprises françaises et britanniques les plus engagées et les plus influentes dans le domaine du financement de la protection du climat et de la nature. Nous avons également avec nous des scientifiques de haut niveau qui comptent parmi les meilleurs experts en matière de climat et de biodiversité. Nos discussions d'aujourd'hui sont parties d'un constat très simple. Si nous voulons respecter la limite de 1,5 degré et éviter une extinction massive des espèces, nous devons massifier l'argent investi pour combattre ces fléaux et donc nous ne pourrons tenir seulement sur les seules finances publiques. C'est pourquoi nous avons besoin que les entreprises jouent leur rôle. Ce que notre discussion d'aujourd'hui a montré, c'est qu'il existe un argument économique pour investir dans la nature, pour investir dans l'agriculture durable et les énergies renouvelables, pour investir dans les forêts. Permettez-moi de n'insister que sur quelques points qui ont été mis en avant lors de nos échanges, parce que notre temps est très limité et que je sais que vous voudrez parler à l'ensemble des participants. Premier point, le rôle clé des banques multilatérales et de développement qui investissent déjà des trillions de dollars partout dans le monde au travers de mandats clairs, alignés avec nos objectifs climatiques et environnementaux. Ces banques de développement doivent prioriser les projets qui en ont le plus besoin et faire levier sur la finance privée. Par exemple, la finance concessionnelle doit être orientée vers les besoins les plus critiques, en particulier en Afrique et peut-être pas tout de suite ou massivement en Asie. Deuxième élément, fournir les bonnes incitations au marché. Cela veut dire avoir un prix du carbone qui soit au bon niveau et se pencher sur les règles et les normes bancaires qui soient adaptées aux enjeux de risque du développement, de l'aide au développement et de la finance climat. Troisième point, la question de l'accountability en bon français. Il s'agit non seulement de s'engager, mais de suivre la mise en œuvre des projets. L'action doit maintenant prendre le pas sur les paroles. Enfin, dernier point, la question et l'importance de l'éducation et de la science, l'éducation des plus jeunes générations à la science et le fait que nous avons besoin de monter collectivement notre niveau de compréhension des enjeux climatiques et des enjeux de biodiversité. Je vais maintenant passer la parole à ma collègue Claire Coutinho qui présentera plus en détail certaines des annonces faites par les entreprises aujourd'hui. Chère Claire.
Good afternoon, Your Majesty and Monsieur Président. Thank you for joining us. As you are aware, we're here today to discuss innovative ways in which the private sector can access climate change and nature loss in developing and emerging economies. Both the UK and France can be proud to be among the first countries to have legally committed to net zero emissions by 2050, but we cannot reach net zero alone. The decarbonisation of Britain's economy will only remove 1% of the world's total greenhouse gas emissions, and deforestation alone across the planet will account for 10 times the UK's carbon emissions. Only global cooperation and commitment will ensure success, but if we get it right, we will leave the environment in a better state for future generations and will create high-skilled jobs for the future and build a stronger, more resilient economy. The progress that we made in the UK in this area is in no small part to the visionary work of Your Majesty over many years to highlight the threat of greenhouse gas emissions long before we had any global consensus on how to respond and long before many had even turned their attention to the issue. But around the world, we still need trillions of dollars of additional investment each year to address man-made climate change and reverse the loss of biodiversity. So I'm delighted to share some key commitments that we discussed today. Participants at the forum include Ardian, Adrida, Amundi, AXA, Tikeo, Capital, Cool Earth, LVMH, Mirova and Vodafone, and they've announced a raft of investments and initiatives worth billions of euros to fight climate change and protect nature, including measures to boost reforestation, green crop management, and clean energy. Another 20 organisations updated the forum on significant progress that they're making across key sectors, from renewable energy and green finance to reducing the climate impacts of industries such as healthcare and manufacturing. This just highlights the importance of collaboration between governments and the private sector. My huge thanks to everybody who attended today and who contributed to a powerful and productive session, and a final thanks to Your Majesty and Monsieur Président for your wholehearted support and leadership.
Thank you.
Monsieur le Président de la République, Your Majesty, I'm very honored to be present today on behalf of the International Advisory Panel on Biodiversity Credits, and in particular of Dame Amelia Fawcett, you know well, my co-chair, to give you a very brief update on where we are. Firstly, we have rapidly begun our work. In less than 3 months, we have put together a geographically very diverse panel of around 20 very committed people, from indigenous people and local communities to finance, industry, and NGOs, all of whom are experts in various aspects of biodiversity. The panel has already met twice. I would like to acknowledge the presence today of two persons you know well, Tony O'Sullivan, and he's the chair of pollination and, of course, of the task force on nature of SMI, and Simon Zadek from Nature Finance. The others are in New York for the Climate Week. We have added the finance ministries of both countries on board to the effort because we want to create financial instruments. We have launched working groups, balanced between North and South, and a knowledge group because, as it was said, we want to highlight the role of science. And I must confess that the indigenous people in our group insist on their way of looking at science. So it's the science of the West, but also their knowledge of nature. We have formed a secretariat with a unique team working really together, as it is always the case, of course, between Great Britain and France. No joke apart, we are very aligned with Dame Amelia, and it's great. So where are we? The issue is complex. We are all very committed, but we know how urgent the work is. Our intention is not to work one more report. It is not to reinvent the wheel. Our ultimate goal is to catalyze high integrity biodiversity markets. There are lots of initiatives, but we want to gather the people together, and as a first step, to have some pilot, scalable projects that will lead the way for others. In our work, we decided to go a little bit beyond forests. Forests are key, but the ocean is also a carbon sink and a very important reserve of biodiversity. Our horizon is COP16, next year on biodiversity, and with an intermediary step in Dubai. As it was said today, there are many other tools, many other work to do for the private sector, for the public sector, but we are very dedicated and we remain at your disposal and we will work hard for you. Thank you very much.
Non. Votre Majesté, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs en vos grades, Mesdames les ambassadrices, Mesdames et Messieurs en vos grades et qualités, I would just say a few words. First, to thank you. I have to say, because definitely you started years ago. And I want to commend you because when you launched this initiative and SMI and all the different initiatives you launched, I mean, you started to gather a lot of different people and to create this momentum precisely for climate and biodiversity. I see Brian there as well, and I know how much committed he was with you, chairing your group of people. And I remember a G7 during which you preached in front of a lot of leaders following this line. So I want to really to thank you because you started years ago with this conviction, and this is where we are. Now, what we believe in here, and I think both of us, is that climate change, biodiversity, and poverty are interlinked. And here are the challenges we have to fix. And this is it was exactly the core of our initiative in June when we launched this Paris Pact for People and Planet. These 4 Ps put in place very simple principles. You cannot separate and ask a country to choose between fighting against poverty, preserving its biodiversity, or fixing climate change consequences. It's all together. Second, this is a national path, including indigenous people and being dealt with people themselves on their own system. Third, we need more public money. This is why I thank the international banks and our development banks to be part of this initiative. And we launched this Finance in Common, which I think is a very great initiative, gathering the efforts of all our banks, because we have to go from billions to trillions, for sure. It's even more true post-COVID. And fourth, we have to leverage and better use private money and to channel properly private money, avoiding eviction effects, but assessing clearly and creating the right assessment and credit. And this is what we started to do with the World Bank and the IMF, leveraging their balance sheet and building new projects. And I think this initiative and the commitment you made today, and I want to thank the private sector being here. I want to thank Laurent Janovic as well, because I know how much committed he is from the very beginning to work on this One Planet Summit and gathering the sovereign funds, the asset managers, and so on, in order to do so. We want now to channel this private money in complement of our development bank in order to provide economic opportunities in a lot of these countries, in order to have conservation initiatives. And we are launching this conservation package. What we need indeed is a biodiversity credit and the right methodology to be properly assessed. But country by country, we are creating this package. And this is an opportunity for the private sector to finance our Just Energy Transition Partnership that we launched in Glasgow, the margin of the COP. And in order to do so, we have to improve the functioning of our carbon credit, because we created the methodology a few years ago, but it's dysfunctioning, let's be clear. So I think this is a lesson learned from biodiversity approach, not to replicate the past mistakes. And fourth, now we will have to build what I would call adaptation package. And we will need both public and private money, because some countries are facing already the consequences of climate change and loss of biodiversity, and we have to help them to restore and adapt themselves. I don't want to be longer, but it's just to say now we are framing more and more with a common methodology in the months and years to come, this approach. But clearly our success will be dependent on the ability of the private market to invest more and more as a complement of World Bank, IMF, Regional Bank, and Development Bank. But I think we need you, and I want to thank you and to commend you for your commitment taken yesterday. And once again, thank you very much, Your Majesty, for, it's a very clear vision you had, and you still have, and your commitment to all these topics. Thank you so much. You know how many. Yesterday.